Hello there. Welcome to American Heron Wargaming. This is a special May the 4th battle report of the X-Wing miniatures game. I did one of these last year and it was a lot of fun, so it only made sense to keep it rolling this year as well. I thought about trying out one of the other scenario packs which have been released, but I realized that there was still a single player X-Wing scenario that I've been waiting to try for a long time. I picked up the Trident Epic Expansion a long time ago, and had never been able to get this ship on the table, as the version 2.5 reboot of X-Wing has completely abandoned the epic concept. This expansion has a scenario where 1 to 4 human players try to hunt down a colloquoid destroyer that's hiding in a swirling nebula. Since the colloquoid destroyer is the Separatist variant of the ship, I thought it only made sense to build a Republic force to go against it. This was also nice for me because I've never gotten to use both of my Acti, nor my V-Wings on the table before, so this was all around a great opportunity to get some less played ships on the table. Since the scenario was built for version 2.0, I used the Legacy Squad Builder app to put together my 200-point list. I figured that there would be nothing more iconic than Anakin and Obi-Wan going on assignment to hunt down a rogue Separatist ship. They each have brilliant evasion, and Obi-Wan has marksmanship. Backing them up are some veteran clones from Shadow Squadron. The Y-Wing has plasma torpedoes equipped, and the V-Wings just have the ESC title, so that they could choose to inflict ion tokens on crits. That might be useful for draining the destroyer's energy, which is a critical resource for those ships. I know that one of the beast plates says Tarkin. I was just feeling lazy and didn't want to hunt down the correct one, but at least the pilot skill was correct. As per the scenario description, the ship we're going after is the quick build colloquoid destroyer. It has an optimized power core and is armed with its default cannons, drill beak, and tractor tentacles. I got the board set up according to the instructions. The red and blue points are potential ambush spots where attacks might come from during the first phase of the game. The asteroids, debris fields, and gas clouds were strewn apart fairly randomly aside from following the listed restrictions. In the first phase of the scenario, each obstacle has a tracking token assigned to it. In the systems phase, ships can gain a strain token to pick up the tracking token. As our squadron collects more and more tokens, different effects trigger. When we collect 6 of the 8, the destroyer is guaranteed to appear. I set up my squadron in relatively open order so they could pick lanes which would set them up for picking up tracking tokens. And with that, it was time to get started with turn 1. Everyone moved out of the starting area fairly quickly, but I had made a blunder at this point that I hadn't realized. I'll explain more in a bit. With nothing to fire at, we moved on to the end phase. First, we rolled 2 dice to see if any ambush attacks happen. Rolling 2 hits, that means that the surprise attack is going to come from each of the red ambush markers. Fortunately for Anakin, the range is only range 0 to 2, so he's safe from this attack. Unfortunately for the V-Wing that ended up on top of the marker, being at range 0 means that you have 1 fewer defense die to roll. So there were 2 hits rolled, and since he boosted instead of focusing, both of his shields flicked away in an instant. After the ambush attacks, we roll a number of attack dice equal to the round number and perform actions based on the results. A single hit means that the ambush markers will relocate. They can bank left or right depending on the position of the closest enemy ship, but in this case they all ended up relocating forward with the 2 straight template. And that's the end of turn 1. 2 shields down, but in a decent place to start moving towards objectives. Or so I thought. Then it was time for turn 2. Here's the blunder I mentioned earlier. When I read the rules the first time, I thought that a ship could scan any obstacle at range 0 to 1 in the systems phase. When rereading it though, in turn 2, I saw that an obstacle has to be in the ship's front arc at range 0 to 1. So the 2 V-Wings and Obi-Wan can't pick up any tokens at all. So I start with the Y-Wing at least, who is able to easily get the token off the gas cloud. Since the Actis can do a purple boost or barrel roll in the systems phase, I send Obi-Wan up to get the one off of the middle debris field. And Anakin similarly does a barrel roll to grab one off of the other debris field. Since we've collected 3 tokens, we get to remove one of the hyperspace markers on the field, which gives us a little control over where the destroyer might show up. I picked the one in the lower left section of the field, as placing the Trident there would have it showing up effectively behind my forces, and that didn't seem ideal. What I had forgotten to account for in the systems phase shift was that the V-Wing moved into Anakin, and they had a little bump. Fortunately, no damage was suffered. The rest of the movement phase went off without a hitch. The Y-Wing and the shieldless V-Wing are all set up to pick up tokens in the next systems phase, and the Jedi are getting set up to head for the obstacles further in the backfield. Rolling now for the ambush attacks, and blank focus means that both of the blue ambush spots will send out an attack. The V-Wing that bumped Anakin evades one of the 2 incoming hits and loses a shield. The other V-Wing that already lost its shields takes another damage from another 2-hit attack. Fortunately, it had a focus token to avoid an untimely demise. I wish my attack dice were this consistent all the time. For the end phase update, we get double hits again, so the ambush tokens are on the move again. The one in the bottom moves underneath the V-Wing it just attacked. and a bit of a kill zone is starting to develop in the center. Not a great place for Anakin to be heading for. But that's the end of turn 2. We have 3 tracking tokens, and are set up to get 2 more, and we've removed the hyperspace point, which would have been more troublesome. Which brings us to turn 3. In the systems phase, Anakin does a purple barrel roll to avoid the arc of the ambush point. The very wounded V-Wing does his duty and takes a strain to take a tracking token. And because the rules don't say that he can't, the Y-Wing takes a second strain to take another tracking token. Now that our team has 5 tokens, we get to reveal the destroyer's secret weakness. Picking the top 2 cards off the huge ship damage deck, I get to set one aside to use later, and the other one goes to the bottom of the deck. I pick the one that's going to do more damage, because I'm a simple man just trying to make my way in the galaxy. The wounded V-Wing is at least able to scoot around the asteroid it just scanned, and is now out of reach of all the ambush points. However, if the destroyer happens to arrive this turn, he could be in for a bad time. Anakin and Obi-Wan don't end up in great positions to scan for the last token. Fortunately, with the bank and the boost, the other V-Wing is set up to scan the debris field on the right side of the board. I rolled double hits again for the ambush attacks, so they'll be coming from the red markers again. Anakin did get out of that arc, so the first marker only has a range 3 shot at the V-Wing, which I realize now is actually out of range, so it shouldn't have been made. But it was also through a rock and easily evaded, so no harm, no foul there. The other red marker's attack also shouldn't have been made as it was range 3, but again, easily evaded, so no sweat. For the end phase update, we get a focus and a crit, which is very interesting. Now, each marker will rotate 90 degrees to the right, and then assign a strain token to the closest ship. So the poor Y-Wing gets a third strain applied from marker 4. Marker 3 gets one onto the battered V-Wing. Marker 2 is just in range to give one to Anakin. And then marker 1 gives a fourth strain to the Y-Wing. This thing is strained to the limit. I realized after doing all that I was supposed to roll a number of attack dice equal to the turn number, and we're in turn 3, so I should have rolled one more. I did that, and it was a hit, which fortunately is supposed to resolve after the focus and crit results anyways, so it's just another relocation. It was nice that I didn't have to walk anything back. If it had been a second focus, then the destroyer would have arrived, and that would have been a drastic rework. Looking at the photo now, I realized that I relocated point 3 in the wrong direction too. Fortunately, it didn't matter, because after picking up the next tracking token, they'll be deactivated anyways. That wrapped up turn 3. 5 out of 6 tracking tokens accounted for, and not too much damage on our forces. Though I was a bit worried about all that strain on the board, and the fact that with the 6th tracking token about to be picked up, it means that the Calicoid's destroyer's arrival is imminent, so I need to set up for that eventuality. And this brings us to turn 4. As expected, the V-Wing takes a strain and grabs the 6th tracking token. As mentioned earlier, having 6 tracking tokens means that the ambush attacks will not happen this turn, but the Trident will be arriving in the end phase. So I do my best to prepare for that. The V-Wing that just picked up the token banks away, and then barrel rolls to the left. If they didn't, and the destroyer arrives at the focus point, then they'd be getting run over. However, as it stands now, they hope that the destroyer is going to arrive at the hit point, or else they're going to have to make a very tight turn next round, or else they're going to clip that asteroid. The other V-Wing, already double strained, pulls a K-turn to be safely out of the way of any of the spawn points, and is now pointed in the right direction. Anakin and Obi-Wan pull around as well, but a traffic jam is starting to develop. Finally, the Y-Wing does one of its 2 blue maneuvers to clear at least one of its 4 strain tokens. And then, the moment of truth. Where does the destroyer arrive? I roll a crit, so it's at the hit point. The massive ship emerges from the nebula, demolishing the asteroid in front of it. And that brings turn 4 to a close. Turn 5 begins, and the hunt is on. I had forgotten to do this upon arrival, but the destroyer always has an aggression marker which highlights which ship it's trying to focus on. It picks the closest ship, which is the V-Wing, which completed the scan and found it out, so that makes a kind of narrative sense. Obi-Wan does a system phase barrel roll to clear some room for the V-Wing who desperately needs to do a blue maneuver. It's tight in the traffic jam, but Annie, Obi, and the V-Wing all fit in there thankfully. The Y-Wing turns in and takes a lock on the Trident, strain tokens be damned. Without a lot of other options, the V-Wing in the destroyer sights pulls a tight turn to avoid smacking into it. Now that all my ships have moved, it's the Trident's turn. I have to draw from a special deck of cards and follow the instructions. Alright, it's a retreat maneuver. But since the ship with the aggression marker is on its flank, it's actually going to do a blue 4 straight maneuver. This does run it over another asteroid, so it loses a shield and takes a stress, costing it energy. It gets a second stress from performing a red evade action, but then reinforces its rear deflector shields. However, since it performed a blue maneuver, the optimized power core gives it 1 back, so it goes up to 2 power. Anakin has no arc on the tentacled monstrosity, so Obi-Wan gets to take the first shot. He scores 2 hits with the Force, but because of the reinforced token, only 1 shield gets plucked. I considered using the secret weakness here, because I can spend one crit to apply that, but since it hurts more depending on how many crits the ship has, I figured it might make sense to wait. Since the Y-Wing isn't fully in the rear half of the Trident, it got to make its range 1 attack without it getting blunted by the reinforce. I rolled 2 damage and considered using the target lock, but I decided to hold off on that one to possibly use next turn with the torpedoes. One of the 2 hits got evaded though, so only 1 more shield down. The battered V-Wing was up next and was out for revenge for those ambush shots. With a focus, it scores 3 hits, though 1 does get blocked due to the reinforce token. The final V-Wing gets 2 hits and a focus, but I decided not to spend the focus token, as this poor sucker is about to take all the hits the Trident can dish out. 1 more damage gets through after the reinforce, but this thing has only 10 hull, so we're 20% of the way there. Fortunately, the primary weapon has no targets, and the drill beak only rolls 1 hit, which is evaded. There's only 1 energy left for 1 tractor tentacle attack, and that's also evaded. Too bad I didn't spend that focus token on the attack. I didn't end up needing it. In the end phase, the destroyer regens 1 shield and 2 energy because it's a huge ship. Still, we've gotten 2 hull damage through and are in a good position to follow up, though if it backs up we might be in a problem. So we'll see how it goes in turn 6. In the systems phase, Obi and Annie both barrel roll to spread the traffic jam out a little bit. Not having any better options, the Y-Wing pulls a crazy K-turn behind the destroyer, right into the beaky jaws. The very wounded V-Wing pulls away for lack of a better option that doesn't bump it into the Trident. The V-Wing with the aggression token pulls forward in an attempt to draw the enemy away from the bulk of our forces. Annie hangs back, but Obi-Wan closes in aggressively. Then, it's time to draw a card for the Trident. Would you look at that? The ship with the aggression marker is in the side arc, so it's going to turn. Fortunately for us, that's a red maneuver, so it will cost an energy to do that. I was worried that a turn might hit one of my ships, but it actually fits in perfectly. After spending the energy for the red maneuver, it only had 1 left. Then it performed a calculate action and target locked the closest ship. It did say closest and didn't mention the ship with the aggression marker, so I assigned it to the other viewing as it was closer by a little bit. Then it was Anakin's turn to fire, and with a focus he put through 2 hits and a crit. Spending the crit to bring in the hull rupture, it stripped the shields and then caused an additional damage. 5 damage down, we're halfway there. Obi was up next and was unfortunately just at range 2, so only got 3 attack dice for the bullseye shot. But he got 2 hits in with the focus, converting 1 into a crit with marksmanship. However, that effect didn't cause anything extra to happen. This time. Our wild Y-Wing pilot was the only other ship we had that could fire. He initially only got a single hit, but I decided to go for it and re-roll the 2 blanks with the target lock, netting me another hit and a crit. With no evade dice at all 3 damage went through, which is enough to destroy the Trident. And that was that. The lights flickered off, the engines and weapons powered down, and the spindly form began gently drifting through space. The mission was a great success, bringing down the Leviathan without suffering any casualties on the Republic side. As the sortie left the field, Anakin asks over the comms, "Does anyone feel like sushi tonight?" And that's a wrap. I was not expecting this scenario to swing so wildly to my side, but I think being in just the right position to deal with the Trident when it appeared and getting to pile on the damage was really critical. I didn't think I'd be able to take it down with just 2 rounds of shooting, though I could have easily lost 1 or both of my V-Wings during that first phase, and with those fragile Jedi zipping around, 1 bad roll could have seen them pop. Though, considering that this build of the Trident would only be 98 points if it were legal outside of the quick build card, which it isn't, it seems like a 200 point list should be able to smoke it pretty effectively. I would guess that the assumption in the scenario design is that more damage gets done in the first phase with the ambush attacks. I got a bit lucky that I never took an ambush from all 4 points at once, as that is a possibility. Either way, it was a really fun scenario. It mixes up the normal X-Wing formula a lot, and makes you think about list building for other things. Plus, I just really love how huge ships got brought over into 2.0, and I've been a bit disappointed to see them so neglected. So getting to bring one out of the mothballs was a real treat. I hope you've enjoyed this battle report, but that's it for now. May the 4th be with you.